When the Charlotte Hornets made a sign and trade in 2019 involving Kemba Walker and Terry Rozier, a lot of people thought they'd hit rock bottom. So they were trading away not just their franchise player, the only star they've had in years, a man who had just made 3 consecutive All-Star games, was coming off a 26-6 career best season on pretty good efficiency. But not just the numbers in production, not just what Kemba was, not just having your only star someone who could actually bring people through the gates and make you somewhat relevant. You weren't just trading that away. In return, you were getting back Terry Rozier, Kemba Walker, Terry Rozier, Kemba Walker, Terry Rozier. One of them was coming off a career best 26-6, the other one was coming off 9 points a game, and he was going to get paid $19 million a year. 9 points a game, under 40% from the field, and they were paying him that kind of money. To a lot of people, this was just typical of a Charlotte Hornets organization that hadn't won a playoff series in 15 years.
But what are we doing, Charlotte? What are we doing? Are we making some kind of move sooner or later to be relevant in the league?
However, funnily enough, a move that was as criticized as any of those moves that they made in that really, really barren spell turned out to be the catalyst for what has turned into a very exciting team, going from what was not an exciting team at all. Now, before I get into that, if you could drop a like on the video, that would be much appreciated. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. That would be cool. I haven't made a video in a while, so just drop a like on it. That would be much appreciated. As expected, without Kemba, Charlotte dropped off in 2019. They only finished with a record of 23-42, as opposed to hovering around the 500 mark the year prior. But for once, Charlotte looked like they were actually heading in the right direction, with all 4 of their top scorers being 25 and under, with one of those guys being Rozier. And while there were still some people suggesting he was overpaid, pretty sure every single one of those people did not watch a single Charlotte Hornets game, which, in fairness, it wasn't exactly the main attraction in the NBA at the time, but he was no longer overpaid because he was performing like his contract suggested, maybe even slightly above. He was looking like a good player, and so were a lot of other guys. Devontae Graham took a major leap. PJ Washington had a fantastic rookie season where he finished second in all rookie. Shout out to PJ Washington. Praise up if you know his situation. Yeah, it's tough. Miles Bridges also was a sneaky most improved kind of guy, doubling his points, pretty much doubling his production, starting just about every game as opposed to not many the year before. So they had these guys that were young and up and coming, all improving and all making adjustments. And all of a sudden, you look at 2018, where Cody Zeller was their youngest starter. I know, that's news to me. I did not think Cody Zeller was 26 2 years ago. I thought he just came into the league like 30 years old. Genuinely didn't think he was that young though, seriously. So he was their youngest starter before Kemba left. After Kemba left, you know who their oldest starter was? Cody Zeller. Does that kind of sum it up as to what they were doing? You had Marvin Williams, you had Nicholas Batum, the other side of 30. Kemba Walker was approaching 30, and Zeller was their youngest player. All of a sudden, 1 year removed, and he was their oldest player. But this was all nice. They'd made the moves to get younger. There was some solid talent on the roster, but they were still lacking someone who could bring them attention, right? They had a nice, solid young roster, but they didn't have that star. They didn't have someone that was going to bring the attention that Kemba Walker brought to this city. So when they got the 3rd overall pick, that's when things changed. Now, keep in mind, despite the Hornets not being very good, hence the title mediocre, they hadn't had a pick above number 9 since Cody Zeller in 2013. So it'd been a long time between them actually having a really solid talent through the draft, or at least a real good chance at someone of that nature. So despite them not really doing anything, they also weren't doing much in the draft, which is hence the title, as I mentioned. Lamelo Ball, however, when they drafted him with the number 3rd overall pick, well, this changed everything for a number of reasons. Forgetting about the potential of Lamelo as a 6'8" point guard with rare vision, a unique ability to read the floor and make big plays, the Hornets immediately became more interesting. Everyone wanted to see Lamelo. You knew House of Highlights, you knew Bleacher Report, you knew ESPN were going to post about him, and now the Hornets, as a result, as much as possible. So immediately, they became just a much more attractive team because of that. And then on the court, what Lamelo could do for you as well, we found out, which I'll talk about in just a second. But before I do that, they also made another move just a couple of days after getting Gordon Hayward, which had mixed responses.
But for the Hornets, this was a bad deal.
There were some people with questions over his health, and there was some merit to the people saying there were question marks over Gordon Hayward. Obviously, he had some injuries, and he was getting paid a lot of money, and he didn't exactly fit the profile of players they had before in terms of age and everything they were going for. But at the same time, I don't think it was a bad move, and we'll talk about that. But regardless of whether Hayward or Lamelo would be major successes heading into the season, this had just tripled the excitement factor. And when you consider Eric Collins, Bridges, Terry, like that's the kind of excitement you're getting. A little bit more exciting than that. That just sounds like someone was dying right there, and I was just, okay, that's definitely not good. I'll try not to get into the field of copying Eric Collins' commentary, so I won't do that. But what I will do is tell you, after finishing 2020 with a record of 23 and 42, Charlotte just jumped up last season to a record of 33 and 39, which really wasn't much off the pace of what they did during Kemba's last year, and was effectively as good as any of those years they had during the Kemba Walker era. Just about as good as any of those years, and this was with a team that was just significantly younger. You had Lamelo Ball, you now had Terry Rozier, you had Gordon Hayward, and a bunch of young guys. Obviously, Lamelo was the Rookie of the Year, and rightfully so, averaging 16, 6, and 6, came out the blocks, firing, was fantastic, and I know it's a cliche, but he was genuinely good beyond the numbers as well. He did other things that really helped this team in terms of getting them out in transition. And also, like I said, just bringing some attention to this team. He did a lot of that because House of Highlights, they don't mind a Lamelo Ball post. They really don't, and they had a lot of those. So Charlotte had that going for them. You also had Scary Terry, who really was a huge reason, maybe the biggest reason for their record, because of his ability to close out games and just his overall play, which netted him a pretty solid contract this year again, which you don't see anyone complaining about that. I did not see one person calling Terry Rozier overpaid this season. You've also got Miles Bridges, who I've talked about. He had a fantastic second half of the season post All-Star break, and just across the board, PJ looks like a really nice complementary piece, and it's a big if, but if you had Gordon Hayward alongside Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, Plum Dog Millionaire, who they just signed as well, who's going to be solid. They traded for, should I say, some of those draft picks, Lamelo Ball, Terry Rozier. This is a team that is just continuing to grow and continuing to look better. All of a sudden, from what they were just a couple of seasons ago, it's a huge turnaround. It's an absolutely huge turnaround. And I just touched on it with Mason Plumlee, but I didn't even mention, in the offseason, they also signed Kelly Oubre Jr., Ish Smith, and then they had a fantastic draft. A lot of people considered this was one of the best drafts of any team in the league. I'm not a draft expert, but in theory, you have the scoring upside and just raw potential of Book Knight, who a lot of people thought was a steal at that pick. You had Kai Jones, who does have the potential to run the floor and be that perfect fit alongside a Lamelo Ball that can throw lobs and just run out in transition and play at a high, fast pace. You had that, and then you had JT Thor, not to mention Ish Smith, who's now going to come off the bench and continue to play at that pace that they want to play at. The contrast between what Charlotte were doing just 2 seasons ago, where it felt like anytime Charlotte made a move, it was just terrible. Whether it actually was or not, but the perception of any move Charlotte made was just absolutely awful. Now, all of a sudden, when they're making the signings of Kelly Oubre Jr., people are like, oh, that could be exciting. Mason Plumlee, they're like, oh, that's some nice center play. Obviously, bringing in Ish Smith off the bench and having a fantastic draft. All of a sudden, people have gone from looking at the Charlotte Hornets team as genuinely a laughingstock, a team that's not going anywhere, that's just clinging on to anything they can get from Kemba Walker and veterans like Marvin Williams and Nicholas Batum, to now one of the more exciting young teams in the league with Lamelo Ball, with Bridges, with Rozier. That's what they're doing, and that's a huge turnaround. And forecasting forward, I'm not too sure where Charlotte will finish, given the talent around the Eastern Conference, and the fact I really don't know what to expect from Hayward because of injuries, along with new guys like Oubre and Plumlee. But there's a lot of merit in the fact that they are now a relevant and an exciting team. To go from a team with no top-end talent just 2 years ago to now having the Rookie of the Year, an all-star level player in Hayward when healthy, and a much improved Rozier and Bridges, and some other nice signings along with the draft picks, like that's a huge turnaround. Another thing I'm also interested to see is the pace they play at, because if you look at what they did on the season, they were around 18th, that's opposed to 30th the year before, so already you see the improvement. But if you look a little bit deeper, when Lamelo Ball was injected into the starting lineup in February and before his first injury, they were the 4th fastest team in the league. So you see the kind of pace that they're trying to play at when Lamelo is on the court and when he's running the team. And that doesn't surprise people because you think this is a team that would run fast. Ish Smith now comes in and gives you that kind of same energy off the bench. Kelly Oubre Jr. is someone that can get out in transition and cut and catch lobs and hopefully do all the things that you want from a wing in a Lamelo Ball-led team and a Gordon Hayward-led team. I think if Charlotte can really make a name for themselves and really establish an identity as a fast-paced team that also has the versatility defensively, which is what they're building as well. Kelly Oubre Jr. had an up and down season in Golden State offensively, but when you look at what he did defensively, he was switchable, he was consistent, he knows what he's capable of, he at least has a lot of confidence in himself, which you want on a team. Sometimes it can get in the way of things if he's not getting the minutes necessary, but you want that confidence, and I believe he has that confidence. He evened out most of his offensive game towards the second half of the season, and then defensively, he was good throughout. So you've got some versatility defensively with Bridges, with Washington, Hayward, and Oubre, and then the playmaking in the backcourt and the shot creation. All of a sudden, you really do have the makings of a very nice roster. It's a versatile roster. You can go small ball with PJ Washington and the wings at your disposal, or you can have Mason Plumlee on the court, who's a dependable veteran. He might not be exciting. I watched him. He does make some dumb decisions, although I think he got a little bit more license to make those decisions in a Detroit team that was not very good, but Mason Plumlee's going to do a job. So you've got him. You've got a couple of different variations in lineups to have PJ Washington play at the 5 and guys that can play at the 4 and the 3. Charlotte have just turned around their franchise, and it's pretty great to see what they've been able to do. I think it's gone under the radar a little bit because it's all been about Lamelo Ball, as it should, but they've made a lot of other moves. Just for a second, think about the situation they would have been in if they signed Kemba Walker to a Supermax. I know he's a Charlotte legend, but right now he just got bought out and he's getting paid $8 million a year. That's what he is right now, which he isn't. That's a steal, but that's neither here nor there. But he's like a $20 million player right now. So if they had signed him to a $40 million deal, which a lot of people were advocating for, a lot of people were laughing at the Hornets for not doing that. How could you not sign him? Why would you sign Terry Rozier? Genius, literally a stroke of genius. So you have to give the Hornets so much credit for that, because that was the catalyst, them changing their direction and then getting a top pick and then signing Gordon Hayward and now signing exciting free agents that want to be in Charlotte because they see what they're building. In the past, Kelly Oubre Jr. is not going to Charlotte. Let's not get that mixed up, unless he's getting paid $30 million a year like they gave to Batum. Now they're an exciting destination, and of course, Eric Collins, we have to mention him because he just makes it all the more exciting. Just in general, Charlotte have had a really good turnaround, and it's been nice to see.